Both events and incidents have their own set of standard attributes, which include their name, source, and details. There's also a way in which extra attributes can be independently added to both incidents and events through configuration settings in the events system. The contents of these extra attributes can be derived when the event or incident is created using a technique often known as enrichment. For example, were I to want an extra attribute on the network outage event that holds the location of the device involved in the outage, I could extend the standard configuration for the network outage event. From the Rules tab of the Event Administration page, I'm going to select the Pre-Storage folder and then add a new rule. I'll configure this rule to detect the network outage events, then create a new attribute and populate it with the location of the device. Placing it in the pre-storage folder gives it the opportunity to store the new attribute in the database along with the rest of the event attributes. This will be a generic type of rule, and I'll give it a name and description. In order that the new attribute will only be added to the event types that I'm going to nominate, there will need to be at least one test as part of a condition. I'll select the All Tests Must Succeed mode, which now allows one or more tests to be added. I need to determine whether this is a network outage event, so I'll need to use the event type test. And select Network Outage from the list of available event types. I could have added multiple different event types if this new attribute were needed by more than one. The final step is to create and populate the new attribute by adding an appropriate action. The action needed is Set Attribute, and the Attribute drop-down menu lists all the standard attributes. However, I need to create a new one, so I'll choose New Attribute. I'll call it Location, I'll give it a description, and leave the option set to store it in the database. I'm going to specify how to obtain the location from the event source object using some Groovy script. It first checks whether the object is a port. If it is a port, it obtains the location from the sysLocation_device attribute in the database using the source.device.sysLocation syntax. Otherwise, it assumes the object is a device and uses source.sysLocation to obtain it instead. Further details of the object model, object attributes, and the associations between objects can be found in the Entuity data reference, which is available from the Help, Entuity User Guides, Entuity Data Reference menu option. This is an example of how object attributes can be derived from the database. I'll save the changes and deploy the newly modified event project. To view this, I'm using the Events option on the menu, but note that I had enriched an event rather than an incident, so I'll switch it over to the Event viewer. The newly created attribute will only be displayed if an extra column is added to the table. I can do this by right-clicking any of the column headings and selecting Configure Columns. Here's the new location attribute, and it's worth noting that this wording is taken directly from the description that was entered into the Set Attribute Action dialog. I'll select it and move it to the list of visible columns, and move it up so that it will appear to the left of the last updated time. I've just created a network outage, and you can see that the new attribute is being populated for the network outage events, regardless of whether the source is a device or a port. Here's a port, and here's a device. A very similar sequence of steps can be used to add an attribute to an incident, but you'll need to use a trigger to run the required action.